This Delaware Supreme Court decision is a remarkable pushback on the University of Delaware's secret deal with Joe Biden to hide his Senate records. And this is the kicker. In the meantime, why won't President Joe Biden release his Senate records? It's simple to do. What is he hiding? First up is big news out of the Delaware Supreme Court. Supreme Court of Delaware, Judicial Watch and our client, the Daily Caller News Foundation, and co-plaintiff, had sued for records about Joe Biden's deal with the University of Delaware to house and then eventually make public his Senate records. As I recall, the deal with him was, well, we'll release the records a few years after you leave public office. And so, in our view, given the public interest in these records, the public financing of the University of Delaware, under Delaware law, we thought these records should have been public. University of Delaware decided they weren't. They wouldn't even give us records about the deal. So the agreement to really hide these records from the American people are also withheld. So we sued all the way to the Delaware Supreme Court, and we were specifically focused on the issue of the records about the deal. Because to me, that's in many ways the underlying corruption. There are legal reasons we focused on that as well, but that's really the underlying corruption, isn't it? Why is there this secret deal between a publicly funded institution and Joe Biden to keep hidden his records from his days in the Senate? Remember, he was in the Senate for nearly 30 years, and the records, I'm sure, reflect on all sorts of activities while he was there. He was head of the Judiciary Committee, so that would be interesting to see what he was doing. The woman who accused him of sexual assault, Tara Reid, she worked for him in the Senate, and she has suggested that complaints that she had about him, or complaints she had about him, might be in these Senate records. And Biden himself also admitted to communicating with Vladimir Putin and other foreign leaders when he was the United States Senator as well. And it's not surprising that he did, but this is the sort of thing that there's a public interest in finding out what he was communicating about. Don't you agree? So we want the records, and we want records about the deal to keep these records away from the American people. So Judicial Watch filed an appeal to the Delaware Supreme Court asking for a reversal of the lower court's ruling, the Delaware Superior Court, which blocked the public state FOIA request for access to the records about his senatorial records maintenance by the University of Delaware. They've got 1,850 boxes of archival records from his Senate career. So in the Delaware Supreme Court's opinion issued on December 6th, the court ruled that the state's open records laws required the university to provide additional information under oath to justify its refusal to produce records about its dealings with Biden. So what they had done was they had a lawyer come in and say, oh, we didn't spend any government money doing this, so you can't have it. And we're like, well, hold on a second. We appreciate you're a lawyer, and that's wonderful, but you've got to go under oath. And they refused to go under oath about this. Unless it is clear, the court wrote, on the face of the request that the demanded records are not subject to FOIA, satisfaction of the relevant court legal section or law section's burden of proof requires a statement made under oath. Such a reading of the statutory text is also supported by the statute's purpose. FOIA safeguards a democratic society by ensuring the meetings and records of governmental entities are available to the public. Therefore, if a public body is to deny citizens an opportunity to observe the performance of public officials and to monitor the decisions that are made by such officials, the public body must satisfy its burden of proof under FOIA in a manner that tracks the seriousness of the statute's purpose and policy. Statements made under oath, such as through a sworn affidavit, accomplish that goal. They bear earmarks of reliability and instill a measure of seriousness in the affiant by subjecting affiant to the risk of penalty of perjury. You know, that's really an eloquent way of saying, if I could describe it or summarize it in my non-lawyer way of talking, they told them, this is an important law. It is fundamental to our democratic system that people have the right to know, and you need to take it serious. And just brushing it off, oh, we didn't have any records here, or don't worry, these records aren't covered because we didn't spend any money. No, I'm not going under oath. You're just going to have to take my word for it. And the court said, no, no, no. That's not the way we work. And this issue is too important. The American people's right to know, in this case, Delaware citizens and the people generally's right to know, is too important for you to slough this off. And furthermore, the court ruled, because universities' factual assertions to the Deputy Attorney General of the Superior Court were not made under oath and do not describe the efforts taken to identify responsive documents, they are not sufficient to meet FOIA's burden of proof. On remand, meaning the court sending it back down, the Superior Court shall determine whether the university has satisfied its burden of proof based on competent evidence in accordance with this ruling. The Superior Court is granted leave to accept additional evidence or submissions as it deems necessary and appropriate. So this is a big deal. First of all, we were playing in Joe Biden's home court. The state of Delaware, as you know, is a small state. So this, and the University of Delaware is a big fish in that small pond up there. And they lost. This deal that they tried to prevent from being scrutinized sufficiently, in my view, and the Judicial Watch's view, and now the Delaware Court's view, is now going to be subject to more court scrutiny. They didn't want it to happen, and now that it will happen. And does this mean we're going to get all those Senate records? No, not necessarily. But certainly this process highlights the secrecy, the illicit secrecy, in our view, around the deal that Joe Biden made with the University of Delaware to keep these records secret from the American people. Not one record from his Senate career is being made public, even though he's President of the United States. As our co-plaintiff and client, the Daily Caller News Foundation, its president said, Neil Patel said, the University of Delaware should stop trying to hide records from the president's decades of political activities. They should be public. This level of corruption should not be happening in America. And as I said, this Delaware Supreme Court decision is a remarkable pushback on the University of Delaware's secret deal with Joe Biden to hide his Senate records. And this is the kicker. In the meantime, why won't President Joe Biden release his Senate records? It's simple to do. What is he hiding? So we're going to keep on pushing. It's remanded to the lower court. Hopefully we'll get some more information in a way that helps disgorge at least some of the records about this shady deal. And then secondly, we get, obviously, our ultimate goal is to force the release of Joe Biden's Senate records. And this is what Judicial Watch does. I mean, we began fighting this last year, and we pushed and pushed and pushed. And of course, the big media doesn't care, because if it were anyone else who was their political opponent, and I don't mean just, they say Trump, it's like, no, if it's not a member of the Democratic Party or their ideological ally, they don't really care about this transparency. And this is a basic transparency issue. We were all alone in the court here, except with our friends at the Daily Caller News Foundation, which are frankly more legitimate in terms of media and true journalism than the legacy media. So this is why Judicial Watch's work is so important, and frankly, why your support of Judicial Watch is so important. Because no one else would have been in the Supreme Court of the great state of Delaware. And now we're holding the University of Delaware accountable, and indirectly the President of the United States accountable in a dramatic fashion. So some great news there, and it's an early Christmas gift to those of us concerned about transparency, accountability, and the rule of law.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.